suddenly because he's that kind of guy. Welcome to the Sheepdog Brotherhood. I'm Brett. That's Doug.
Doug Hewlett. Pleasure
Yeah.
to see you guys again.
And we're going to start with something that has absolutely nothing to do, but will somehow make it applicable to the Sheepdog Brotherhood. And Doug has been delaying getting this podcast episode going this morning because he has been this morning in the kitchen. We talk about doing hard things here. I'm not sure this applies, but maybe it does. Doug's going to defend himself shortly, making sourdough bread.
Yeah.
And so, Doug, I'm going to give you the opportunity to talk about what an adventure that has been and somehow how that applies to doing hard things. And I'm not going to attack your masculinity, at least not yet. Let's hear
it. Yeah. So the videos make it look really easy. It's not. I'm still like digging dough, like dried up, crusty dough off of my finger hair. It's unpleasant. It's sticky. I can't get rid of it. We will not know until tomorrow exactly whether or not this worked. But it's not hard, certainly. This is not do hard things. This is do sticky things because
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you shared that story of woe with me this morning and I stopped crying after a while, feeling sorry for you, my solution was, Doug, you have a truck, you have a store, and you can drive to the store, you can pay some money, and you can buy the sourdough bread, someone having made it for you. And especially after you told me, like I'm thinking, okay, you suffered a little bit here. You're going to shove that bad boy in the oven and you'll be eating bread like an hour from now. Okay, that's not too bad. And then you told me, how long is this process?
Yeah, it's like every 45 minutes you have to do a thing, and then you let it rest overnight, and then you get to bake it the next day. It's very involved. But you know what? Here was my reply to you.
Well, what?
When whatever comes down the pike here, September, October, November area, because we have an election coming, and you can't get things that you need because it's not at the store. Because remember last year or a couple of years ago with COVID, right? Like you couldn't get toilet paper. Everybody with a bidet was laughing because they didn't even need toilet paper. Now, I'm not comparing my sourdough bread to a toilet paper, but there's a chance that it could be that bad. But between now and then, I'm going to learn how to make sourdough bread with my 8-year-old daughter. And we're going to have delicious bread whenever we want it, so long as we have like the 48 hours we need to prep it and make it.
Well, if your forecast of American Armageddon comes true, I just have to remember that you love me and that I have a truck and I can drive 3 hours to your place and I will be on my knees apologizing for making fun of you about this.
Yep.
And then hopefully, because you're a good Christian man filled with mercy, you will say, Brett, please come in and have some of our sourdough bread that we've stacked up in this room 10 feet high for the next 20 years.
Yeah, I don't know if it works like that. Oh, here's the other part. You have to make like a starter. Hold on. Beyond that, you have to make a starter out of yeast and water and let it rest for like days, and then you have to keep feeding it. This is such an involved process. Anyway, let's actually jump into the episode.
Look, Doug, this is why our relatives, I'll say ancestors, after going through this for centuries, millennia, said, you know what? What if we had a store? This is like the Adam Smith Wealth of Nations, you know. I'll use my comparative advantage because I make bread better than you and you raise chickens better than I do, and then we can exchange in trade. Economics 101, right? I'm so glad our ancestors figured that out. And I'm not spending like half my day making bread.
Yeah, it's going to be delicious.
Yeah.
Anyway,
all right.
Let's jump into the episode.
5 minutes of that.
Yeah.
5 minutes later. Yeah, what
So,
are we talking about today? Let's get serious.
um, you know, this week, I mean, I know there's been some things in the news.
Yeah.
In my neighborhood here, I'm also in a men's group, and we meet, the first Saturday of every month, and we sat down and talked yesterday. And the thing that keeps coming up in different groups that I'm involved in, conversations that I hear online and in podcasts, is there is a massive craving for for men to push back against society, calling and saying that men
Mm,
should not be masculine, men should be, whatever. There's no difference between men and women. And I
mm,
just keep hearing, like, even the woke people are, I feel like, starting to actually wake up
mm,
and realize that, this effeminate male culture that we have today, where men don't know how to do things. Men, like, men just want to, no offense, Brett, men just want to outsource everything. They don't know how to be men. They know how to be women, right? I mean, if you think back, probably when you were going through high school, there was a time when they got rid of shop class, right? And
yeah.
think of the dudes that ran shop class, right? It generally wasn't a woman. It was a guy who
Yeah.
had practical experience doing a thing, doing a trade. And they got rid of that. And that class showed young boys and young
Mm,
girls, but primarily young boys, like, hey, you don't necessarily have to go to college. Here is a skill set that you can learn. You can then go and apply that to a trade and make money. Once you get through your, apprenticeship, you have the ability to go out and start making money. And we got rid of that class, and we then had more female teachers, right? Like, that was definitely a male role model,
yeah.
someone who, these young boys who maybe college wasn't the path for them,
Hmm.
but they were told suddenly that, like, well, college is the only option. There's
Mm,
not many male teachers here. You started learning from all the female teachers,
mm,
and that positive role model that, maybe you did or didn't have a father that knew how to do those things,
yeah.
suddenly wasn't there at the school anymore, and it was just backfilled by a whole bunch of lady teachers.
Yeah.
I don't know where I'm going with this, but
Well, there's a, I was trying to think in the past 6 months, I met someone and they were talking about, it was a guy, he was talking about this amazing school. I don't remember the name of it. It's out in the countryside somewhere. It's a school for boys. And yes, they do. Of course, you go in the classroom and you learn things. I mean, you got to learn math, right? But man, do they spend a lot of time outdoors, like building things. And I'll get the details of this wrong. He said they have a contest every year where, like, the team of boys will build like these boats, which I assume look like canoes or something like that, and it's like a race, right? And I don't think they're given like a lot of assistance. They got to like figure it out, you know. And I love that kind of thing. It's like, how did we get to this point where there's so much research and you hear people talk about it, like little boys in class where recess times have been, shortened and shortened and shortened, and in some cases completely eliminated whatsoever. These boys need to be running around, like burning energy, and instead they're sitting in class, like, looking at this teacher and looking at stuff on the board. And that's just not what we're built to be. I mean, if you look at all of human history, our ancestors didn't do that, like even up till very recently. So this is all kind of a new thing, sitting there in the classroom and not getting out and learning through experience, right? Experientially learning those things. And he said that the graduates from this obviously very small school are just outstanding in terms of virtue, character, and their academic acumen. Like, these are smart kids. And I think there's something to that, like this holistic education where there's a lot of hands-on, literally hands-on stuff, like learning how to do stuff and running that other academic stuff through that. But for some reason, we've just completely thrown all of that away, right? All of the experiential stuff gone. Like you said, when my dad was in high school, he just didn't care about academics. He spent like most of his time in, it wasn't shop, it was auto mechanics, right?
Yep.
How many high schools now have that? Like none, I don't think. You just don't hear about that.
But here's the funny thing. The trades are the people who bail out the people with a 4-year degree.
Yeah.
Right. Like there's a guy here in the neighborhood. I love him to death. He's a great big bear. He's a wonderful man, incredibly successful. I'm not going to share his name, but I'll tell you what, man, like if a light bulb went out in his house, he's going to be sitting there in the dark because he just doesn't know what to do.
He's worse than me.
And, but that's what I see with the trades. People are sort of taught to like look down their nose at somebody who works with their hands for a living.
Yeah.
And, oh, well, they didn't have a 4-year degree. So therefore I rank somehow above them because they work with their hands. But I'll tell you what, like the ability to think laterally, the ability to look at a problem and assess what the problem is, come up with a solution, apply the solution and get through and not have it be on a PowerPoint or an Excel document. Like there is a skill set there that we just don't value, and to the point you were talking about going outside and playing and building stuff and just being outside and working with your hands. Yeah. I mean, think about why YouTube is so successful with people learning skill sets. And it's because it's not like, yes, I could read the recipe on how to make sourdough, but I'll be damned if I didn't watch a video like 4 times to see what was being done. And there's a big difference between somebody sitting in a classroom and teaching you fractions versus taking a measuring tape and having to figure out, well, I want to measure the length of this wall. And then I have to add 5/8 to it because that's how thick the sheetrock is. Like that's a different application than just reading it in a book. And I don't know. I don't know where this episode's going, but.
Well, I tell you, Doug, I don't think on any of our episodes we've talked about that dreaded word AI. But when you think about what AI is replacing and could replace in the very short term, it's the jobs that all those people that you're talking about that look down their noses at the trades, it's those jobs.
Oh, yeah.
So I was meeting with an ad agency last week, and we finished up our meeting, and we, for some reason, we got on the topic of AI because I just asked them, I was like, well, what do you think? Like, are you concerned that AI could come in and eventually take over the ad agency space? And there was a little bit of concern. They did say something interesting about, AI combines a lot of things, but it won't come up with like this outlandish, out of the box kind of creativity, which I found interesting and possibly true, but maybe only in the next 5 years or so, right? Sooner or later, it seems to me, in the same way that a human mind can be taught or naturally can come up with these like crazy out of the box ideas. Well, why couldn't you train like an algorithm to do that as well, right?
Sure.
Yeah. So I'm not sure that they're as quite as secure as they might seem. But you think about the trades. I mean, I realize in the future you start to talk about robots, but it's like
AI can't fix your plumbing.
Exactly. Oh, my septic tank backed up. Well, no algorithm is going to help you with that. So got to call a person. And so I think you might say this shift kind of back to, hopefully, I think it's better. This shift kind of back to a lot more hands-on kind of stuff because AI, they thought it wouldn't like invade the creative world. And look at one of the
It's
first
like the
things
first thing it did.
was the graphic art, right? I mean, it's unbelievable. That's just its early iterations. Can't even imagine what's gonna be like in the future. So, and then like you think of like legal contracts, finance, like all these areas that have a lot of brainiacs, architecture, all these areas that have a lot of brainiacs. It's like, well, AI can do that better and faster than you because it just has access to like all knowledge. I can pull into one thing, do some combinations. You can't do that as a human. You just don't have the time to go learn all of that. So yeah, I think there may be this big move back to much more hands-on stuff.
For good, just the driveway.
it's it's because you failed as a man in your sourdough duty, and
Yeah.
she's had enough. I'm out of here.
Enough of this moron. That was the other topic that came up yesterday was how men are now depicted in like for the most part, every sitcom on television
Yeah,
as being a giant friggin' moron, the butt
yeah,
of every joke. And we compared that to, we've been watching The Brady Bunch, right?
yeah.
From the early or late 60s, early 70s, like the original Brady Bunch.
Hmm.
And the thing that you see in that show is the dad, Mike Brady.
Mhm.
Dad knows what he's talking about, right? I mean, like he makes mistakes, but they show him as being a father that obviously cares very much about his children, his adopted children. Um, he's contemplative in that, he thinks about something. He recognizes maybe when he's made a mistake, but he is by no means the butt of every joke.
Yeah,
And compare that to The Simpsons, right? I mean, here's a modern reference.
Hmm.
Homer's just a moron. Like, it's amazing that Homer's even able to hold down his job because he's such an idiot.
Well, look at all the male figures in that show, like all of them, including little Bart. I mean, they're all idiots, like total stupid morons. And then what's the little daughter's name? Whatever her name is.
Lisa.
Lisa. Lisa's like the genius, right? And Marge, though, is not exactly, super amazing, but she's not depicted as this bumbling idiot, right? Like
Yeah.
all the male figures are just completely stupid. And
It's,
then
I mean,
what's the other one? Family Guy, right? Same thing. The
but
guy,
even not cartoons, right? I mean,
yeah,
think about standard TV shows today.
Mhm.
Men are generally portrayed as being the source of all problems,
Yeah,
right? Like if there is if
Mhm.
there's an issue that's happening in the episode that needs to be resolved, it was created because of the guy did something stupid because he's an idiot. And how does he get himself out of this? And it's
Mhm.
always, you know, but
I
why?
wonder,
Why
Doug.
are we doing this?
I was going to ask the same thing. Why? Why? Not only why are we doing this, is why did we let it happen as men? Because this has been going on a long time. So
Mhm.
I was trying. I can't remember the name of the. It was an animated TV series. And anyway, so this would have been like 25 years ago because my son Kevin was watching it. And anyway, the heroine in this thing was the one that was always incredible. She was solving the problems. She was the leader. She was making all things happen. And there's nothing wrong with that. But what was wrong with it is her sidekick was this doofus man, or probably more like a young man, who could not walk and chew gum at the same time. He was the one that was always messing things up that she had to fix. I wish I could remember the name of the show. And that beginning of starting to do that to men began a long time ago, at least 30 years, if not more. And I'm still intrigued, like, why did we let that happen? Like, there's never been, I don't believe, strong pushback from men individually or as a group just saying, stop doing that. As a matter of fact, it's most likely men who are behind the production of those kinds of things.
I mean, look, as men, it's fun to tease and make fun of our shortcomings, our misgivings, the stupid decisions that we make. Like, yes, that's part of being a man. It's part of being a woman. Like, everybody makes stupid decisions and causes problems for ourselves that we need to resolve. And this episode, our chat today, right, is not about men aren't stupid, stop making fun of us, and women, it's women's fault. Like, that's not it at all. Because the whole point of us sitting down to talk is our goal is to call men to be better so that we can, as Brett loves, and I'm getting better at it, so that we can fulfill our duty, which is God has assigned the duty to every man, the dignity of every woman. So we're not
nicely
trying to
done, Doug. I want to affirm you. You probably practiced that like 300 times this morning before you got on.
So many times. We're not trying to say that women aren't good and men are better. Like, that's not it at all. We feel that we're called to be better for the women in our lives and within the circle of within our circle of influence.
Yeah.
And that's it. Like, we have to stop being the men that TV portrays us as. We need to take spiritual leadership roles in our families. We need to recognize when we are called to a task that seems difficult and hard and not one that we want to do, but we know that it can better the lives of our families, our loved ones, the women in our lives. We need to do that. And look, as men, as somebody who was once 18, and just for the record, I'm as old today as I've ever been. And,
clever.
At 18, man, I made some pretty stupid decisions. I was thinking with the wrong end. And, I look back on those decisions and man, I wish I could take some of that stuff back. And I know you've shared your story in the past, and both of us in certain situations haven't done the things that we should have done. And we need to teach both young men and middle-aged men and old men. That's our goal, is to help us all become better so that we can fulfill our duty of upholding the dignity of all the women in our lives.
Yeah, it has this feel. It's kind of like, a lot of times it's like take back, fill in the blank. This feels like a take back authentic masculinity, something like that. Sounds like a t-shirt. But there's something to that because it has been probably mostly not through, well, maybe it's just through neglect. It's not like men, I think, it's not like most men have just been like, oh yeah, you know what? I want to be more feminine. I want to become like a woman. It's not that. It's just that we just kind of like passively let it happen and look at the results. My goodness, the things you read on the news day after day in our culture are just like almost surreal. If you went back like 30 years or so, and that the kind of article titles that you see pop up in your feed every day now, you would think it was like fantasy land. It's like, that's not possible. And here it is. It's not only is it possible, it's become commonplace. You see it all the time. And there's almost like this collective shrugging of shoulders, like, no, what can I do about it? Yeah, that's the way it is. And what we're talking about is, well, no, that's not the way it is. It only happens because people let it happen, and especially men. And so person by person, man by man, let's start to take this back. Not in a, let's go storm the gates kind of way, but within our own families, with, like you said a second ago, within our circle of influence. What can I do to dignify the women in my life at all times? That's constantly at the forefront of my mind. That service-oriented heart, fraternal humility, as we talked about on another episode, where how can I best serve them so that they can become the best version of themselves? And how many men even have that at the forefront of their minds, like ever? Very few. So I think that's a huge part of taking back the culture, is doing it like this, like man by man, as a small group, lots of groups, larger group, become a movement, and then things really start to change. But it just seems that recent men are just now, like you said in your men's group, men are just now starting to kind of wake up about this from this long slumber of being sissified, you know?
How did we get here, right? I mean, you made a point about, if you went back and looked at, news feeds from 30 years ago, the end of World War II, right? The U.S. was under like great economic prosperity. Things were like rolling around. We got into the space race, and you look at like old black and white reels of ads for like what people thought the future was going to be. It was like these floating cars, and everything looked like a rocket ship. Okay, so compare that to, all right, in 1950, we thought we were by 2024 we would have flying spacecraft to get to work, like the Jetsons.
The Jetsons.
Okay, and what do we have? We've got men wearing dresses saying that I'm a woman because I've got a beard, but I feel like a woman today, so therefore I'm a woman. That's what we got. We didn't get the space car ships to get to the office. We got dudes in drag calling themselves women.
You know what, Doug? There were definitely researchers, though, and philosophers who saw this coming, like, even like 30, 40 years ago, because they're just very good at seeing like the deep trends that end up bubbling up and forming everything out in the future. Futurist kind of guys. And but no one would believe it. They're like, that's like, it's like, come on, are you serious? No way that's going to happen, right? And then here we are.
When you look at like past civilizations that have fallen, like great civilizations in history that have fallen, where we're at today is pretty much what happened just before like the fall of the Roman Empire, right? Like they were doing the same stupid stuff, and here we are. I feel like there's only like 7 people walking around going, am I taking crazy pills? Like, what the hell is happening? But
there's a great article this week in First Things that talks exactly about that. It's a very pessimistic article. I can't remember if it's First Things or Town Hall, but whatever. I'll find it, send it to you. But it has that same kind of tone. It's like, look, we are so irresponsible as a country right now. It's like I was talking with my youngest son this morning. I said, our interest on our debt, our country's interest on our debt will be this year over $1 trillion. That is interest. That is insane. That is completely unsupportable over even the medium term, much less the long term. And it's a train wreck. The train is already running off the rails. The question is can there be enough fortitude and discipline to bring it back on the rails? Look at our culture right now. The answer is obviously no. That would take the kind of cojones that no one in our government right now has. So the reason this guy was bringing this up, he was kind of harking back to Reagan back in the 80s, right? 80s. And how he had those kind of steel cojones where he was just like standing up to things, and he made some mistakes too, but for the most part, he was just a very principled leader. And that's the kind of person we need right now. Not the person, we need a bunch of people like that, because this is just a train wreck. And you may have heard, I can't remember who coined the phrase gradually and then suddenly. And that's, you were talking about the Roman Empire. That's kind of how it happened. He was saying the Romans knew that they were in deep S. They knew they were screwed. And yet they also knew at the same time that they couldn't change course. Isn't that bizarre? they knew it's not like they didn't know the problems and then suddenly it was a major shock when Rome just crumbled and fell apart. They knew it was falling apart, and yet the things it would take to stop that and then reverse course, they also knew they couldn't do, because the culture had become so corrupted that it was frankly impossible. And to your point, you wonder if we're kind of getting there in this society, in this culture right now.
The number of people that have been told at school that they shouldn't have to work for anything.
Yeah.
Like I saw this video the other day. I forget who it was. This kid was complaining that he has to work every day to be able to buy food and an apartment. And who the hell taught this kid that he shouldn't have to work 40 hours a week to be able to make money so that he could buy things, so that he could sustain his life, so that he could then have goals? And like, he just wants to sit around at home, with his AI goggles on and, just not have to do anything. Like, how the hell
Well,
did we get here?
we've talked about that word entitlement on
Oh, yeah.
episodes before, and it isn't interesting too. Entitlement, like that's what they call, I think, officially. Some of these government programs are actually called that, right?
Yeah.
Entitlements. Like, yes, you, 18-year-old pot smoking guy watching videos all day long, you're entitled to this. How about, getting political here, but come across our border in this country, you're entitled to everything this country has to offer just
Some
because
free
you
stuff.
breathe air. I don't know. It's like, it's so strange. It's like, it's almost surreal. It's almost like we're in a movie. It's like this can't be reality.
Idiocracy. It's idiocracy. We are there.
There you go. Yeah, we are
Oh,
there for sure. That's depressing. It just makes you want to go make some more sourdough bread, is what it
yeah,
makes you want
that's
to do.
what I'm gonna actually. Well, in preparation for the future, I've got to go tend to my high tunnel to make sure that I got dirt and compost this week to fill my high tunnel beds so that we can start growing inside now. So yeah.
I'm so glad I have a friend like you for when the world falls apart. I just have to have enough fuel in my truck to get down there, and you'll take care of me, right? I'll help around the farm. I can chase chickens, and
Man, I'm telling you, it's why you got to own a diesel truck. It's
I
why
don't
you
have
need a
that.
diesel truck.
I don't have that, but yeah. Did you want to talk about the other news that we talked about earlier? CVS and Walgreens.
Well, we're at 32 minutes right now. Do you want to, I would like to
Save it.
wrap my head around that a little bit more before I start speaking. I mean, look, Lord knows I do not speak eloquently about anything. Um,
I'm glad you
so
recognize that in yourself. That's very good.
yeah, and I'm generally just shooting from the hip with some idea that like you've heard of like the blood brain barrier.
No.
Like the blood brain barrier is like when you have medicines and chemicals in your body, like the ability for those things to get from the bloodstream into the brain.
Okay.
But I have a very thin brain mouth barrier. So like if it happens up here, give it about a nanosecond and it's right out the mouth. So
Before you even know what happens, out it
before you
goes.
even know what happens. So anyway, this is episode 8, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Correct.
That's amazing, huh?
So maybe we
I'm gonna.
save that for next week, because I'll be giving a talk up at the Oklahoma Catholic Men's Conference, Oklahoma Men's Catholic Conference, some combination of those words, and I'll be talking about some of these things with my friend David Wright, and yeah, so maybe it would be good to kind of give a follow up on the talk, see what their reactions from the men were. It's going to be like, I think it's like 1,000 men, so there's going to be quite a few men there. When I give a talk like that, it's always, we don't do Q&A or anything like that, but it's always interesting. They come up to you afterwards, and the things they have to say are always very interesting. So maybe we could talk about that.
You know what? Maybe also talk to David and see if while you guys are together, perhaps we do the podcast and have him on as a guest next week if he's available. Can carve out 30 minutes of time while you guys are together.
We'll try. I mean, we'll try. We'll see.
Cool.
He's a busy man.
Well, So am I. I've got a high, but does he have a high tunnel he's tending to?
More importantly, can he skillfully cook sourdough bread?
No.
Does he have the patience?
I'm under the opinion that sourdough is magic because it doesn't work for me. It's magic.
Yeah, it's not a skill thing. It's the ingredients that are the problem. It's not the artisan in your case, the
No. It's the
craftsman.
artisan. It's the artisan. I have none of the sorcery required to make sourdough bread. Yeah,
It's all right, Doug. You're good at many other things. We can't all be strong at everything. It's okay.
it's
Don't feel
kind of
bad about
obvious.
yourself today.
All right, brother. Well, hey, have a great day. Be
Cheers.
well. Talk to you next week.
Thanks. See ya.
See you.